I'm going to remind you that actually that there's lots of cause for hope as we get there. So, to me, at the moment, there's this huge misalignment between what we know that we need, what science tells us we need, what our hearts tell us we need, and what politics and economics are giving us. And we've got this situation where collectively, we're creating a world that none of us as individuals want. There's a huge misalignment between what we really want, what we know is important, and what we're actually seeing. And so, let me give you some snapshots of that. We're already exceeding 3 of the 9 planetary boundaries. We're pushing up against what the Earth can handle. And so we're transgressing these tipping points. Already we're really pushing up way too beyond the Earth's safe operating space. We've got, you probably can't read that at the back. What they're saying, they're sitting around a campfire and they're saying, yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for shareholders. We've got this economy that is just not delivering what we want. It's not working for us. Since the Second World War, we had this situation where average wages basically followed the rise in productivity up to the 70s. So it was okay, we could increase consumption, or we could increase our living standards, we could buy stuff. And then, since the 1970s, what happened is that median wages started to stagnate, and the share of national income started going to the very, very top. You'll know all this is familiar to you. And so what we did is start to paper over that gap, that widening chasm, through borrowing and through debt, and perhaps through North Sea oil, some might argue. And so basically, we borrowed and went into debt to hide the fact that the economy is not delivering for us, trickled down but is not working. And Oxfam, about 10 days ago, put out a report saying that 500,000 people are now going to food banks, and that's a tripling of the numbers that went to food banks 12 months ago. I mean, our economy is patiently broken. And so, what we've got is this widening inequality, and you don't need to see the numbers behind this to get the point. What it's showing is a rise in director salaries versus sort of cleaning stuff. And you can see, I can't remove that from you, but anyway, you get the point. I mean, we've had this massive fanning out of incomes, while those at the very, very top race away. And of course, the widening wealth inequality is just worse and worse and worse than that of income. Who tell us that so many of our current social problems, crime, community, lack of community cohesion, educational breakdown, health, all of those can be attributed to inequality, and there's other work around this too. And so we've expanded the gap between rich and poor to the extent that social class, and it is terrible, social class is now the most predictable correlate of mental health. And so when people become anxious about their position in society, they become stressed, they have threats to their self-esteem, their stress hormone cortisol goes up, their immune system shuts down because they're ready for fight or flight, which is basic, natural wiring of our bodies. Fatty acids build up, and people are primed for heart attacks and stroke. And so what we're doing is just creating an economy that's completely unhealthy. And so this misalignment has translated itself. What we've tried to do is fulfill intrinsic needs with extrinsic activities like shopping. And so it's unsurprising that despite the increase in wealth in the West, happiness has plateaued, life satisfaction has plateaued. And you get people like Jeffrey Sachs talking about the paradox of affluence, where you have greater incomes not leading to any increase in life satisfaction. And you couple that with rising depression, rising mental health, rising suicides, particularly in Scotland compared to England and Wales, and it's all too apparent that something is seriously, seriously wrong. There's this great misalignment that's going on between the context and the structures of society and what we know we need. So, again, you probably can't read this. It's unsurprising that people feel there are few paths open to them. So what they do is they work harder, they spend more, they buy more stuff, they speed up that hedonic treadmill, they get more and more stressed, they panic more, and then our communities are withering or imploding or rioting. So, part of the to me, is with this misalignment, is what we've done is we've let ourselves and we've let our planet become servants of the economy. That's already been talked about this morning. We've let the economy be the ends in itself rather than the economy as a mechanism to deliver what we really need. So we've created a system in Scotland that sees Scottish people, its land, its communities, its environment as just ingredients to profit making. And so what we wanted to do is step back a bit. This is one of my favourite quotes. I use this every time I talk about the Humankind Index. It's by a Canadian economist called Mark Analyski. So he says, in GDP terms, the hero is a chain-smoking, terminal cancer patient going through an expensive divorce who crashes his car on the way to his job as an arms dealer because he's texting while eating a takeaway hamburger. Now, the misalignment comes from the fact that every single one of those activities by that character will contribute to GDP. But that's not the sort of person we want to spend a Sunday morning with. That's not the sort of person we want in our community. And that's certainly not the sort of person we want running our country. So we need to get away from this misalignment, and we'll know we've got to the good society when we bring it back. So what Oxfam has done is try to focus on a wee bit more about measuring what's important to bring back alignment between the economy and the political process. And this is called my Sesame Street map. It's basically a model that Oxfam uses around the world to highlight what's important to resilience, what's important to real prosperity. Yes, financial assets are important, but so are all these other things like our human assets, our social assets, our natural assets. I can talk about that a lot more. And what we did with the Humankind Index is try to focus on bringing back some equilibrium, bringing back some balance so that policymakers can take account of all 5 of those assets. And if you'll forgive the random rugby reference as the British Lions go out to my country and hopefully get beaten. This is far from perfect. Far from perfect. We had a tiny budget, but our mentality was, let's just get the ball out on the pitch. Let's try and get it out there and start the debate, start building a conversation, and that's certainly what's happened. So what we did was take all the theory in the literature that we could and build on that. My boss talks about standing on the shoulders of giants. We've certainly done that to the best we can. And what we did was go out to communities. And particularly we went out and reached out to the communities that Oxfam works with, those who are seldom heard, those who are marginalised from the mainstream policy-making process, those who, almost by definition, that mainstream policy-making process is not working in their interest of. So we reached out to those groups, the poorest people, the refugees, the asylum seekers, the people with long-term health conditions, and we said to them, what do you need to live well in your community? And so we had all sorts of mixed methods. We had focus groups, street stalls, big community meetings, we had an online survey, all sorts of mixed methods. It was really messy, but it was really, really fun. In the end, we spoke to almost 3,000 people. And this is what it looked like. This is one of the street stalls. Here we go, we're sitting at one of the shopping centres. Little girl helped the father there allocate some priorities. This is in this very hall a couple of years ago. And we were just asking people, what do you need to live well in your community? What's important? There it is. And what we then did is gather all those conversations together, all those numbers, all those discussions, and we tallied it up. And that was really hard work as well. We worked with the New Economics Foundation to do it, and we tallied it all up, and we came up with a set of priorities, 18 priorities, and I call them factors of prosperity. And these are the things that our good society and our good economy needs to deliver. So I won't talk through them all, but they're things like feeling good, human rights, high quality services. I'll keep going through. All this is online. Secure source of money, having enough money to pay the bills, access to green space, feeling that you and those you care about are safe, satisfying, this is way up there, satisfying work, whether paid or unpaid. And then the top 2, having an affordable, decent and safe home and having mental and physical health. So quite intuitive, but you look at what's going on with widening health inequalities in Glasgow and you know we're not there yet. So what this is about, we'll know we're successful when policymakers start turning their attention, all of their attention, to growing what's really, really important, to creating and cultivating this good society. And what that means is creating spaces for community rather than just for consumption. I tried to go out at lunch yesterday in Glasgow and sit down in the sun. I couldn't find anywhere to sit other than going out into shops or cafes and spending money. I mean, we've created spaces for private consumption rather than places for hanging out and being community. When we have jobs that are good quality jobs, as Anne talked about, ones that enable work-life balance, that enable sort of self-determination factors like autonomy, relatedness and competence, when the environment is protected and cherished for itself rather than just being seen as an ingredient to making more profit. And this is an interesting one, given this morning's news that benefits budget is more than the NHS. Actually, we'll know we'll get there when we can shrink our health budget. And it won't be because George Osborne has removed ring fencing and austerity is hitting the NHS as well. It will be because people's lives and people's communities and people's states of mind are keeping them healthy as well. And so actually we won't need to pay for expensive intervention triage at the deep end of the health spectrum. People will just be healthier by living in good communities and living in a good society. And so we'll have this situation where economic growth is seen as a means to an end. We'll care more about the quality and distribution of growth rather than just incremental GDP. And we'll care more deeply about each other. We had a good conversation earlier on about sharing. That's what it will be all about. We'll know we'll get there when we share better. And just as a final outtake, let me tell you, I think there's examples that we've already got. It's not a huge leap into the great unknown, because it's already known. Already there's pockets of inspiration happening in communities, and you're probably actually all involved in them. This is a group, we took some of the community people that we work with in Govan up to South Uist to help the community in Govan help build sand barriers to stop the tide coming in and coming over the crofting land in South Uist. This is something we talk about at the office called Mittens on Rails. It's just our shorthand for random acts of kindness. Once you start looking out for mittens put up on rails, you'll see them everywhere, and that will keep you hopeful. I love saying this. Last month when I was in Bhutan, these are my friends from Bhutan. It's a laboratory for the world. Now, they're not getting it perfect by any means, and I'll be the first to tell you. But Bhutan has said GDP is not the most important thing for government to pursue. Gross national happiness is. So there's an example there. And to me, these are the little lights of inspiration. This is a map that sets out these things that are the transition to new economy around the world. We will know we've got there. We know we've got to the good society when that map is covered and we're blinded by those lights.